Awesome. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this month's edition of the Washington, D.C. Power Platform User Group. Very excited to have everybody here. And if you're watching the recording, thank you for tuning in. Again, my name's Jamie. With us today is Jenna McKee. Jenna is going to be doing a really cool story that she has about, I believe it's a Skills Matrix app. Jenna has been a longtime member of the group and very excited to see her present here. So Jenna, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. And yeah, I'm excited to have a chance to share. I'm going to go ahead and use PowerPoint Live if you don't mind.
We love PowerPoint Live. Thank you for using Microsoft products.
Makes a lot of things a lot easier, especially since I've got a lot of hyperlinks embedded in the slide deck. And if anybody, again, English is not your first language, feel free to use the built-in translator. And I don't think I locked down the movement, so if you need to go faster or go back to a slide, you can do that as well. So yeah, so excited to be here. As Jamie mentioned, I am a longtime member. I think I was there for the first meeting. If I remember correctly, it was a tutorial demo of how to use Power Automate to route responses from a form to Power BI data flows, or something like that. So yeah, been around for a while. It's been a great group, learned so much, and so I'm excited to have a chance to share a little bit about what I've been working on. So again, for the folks that were here for the happy hour, my disclaimer here, I use SharePoint, not Dataverse. It's my data storage. There is a reason for that, so if you're curious, I will talk about that afterwards. But without further ado, just a little bit about me. Again, I have been around for a while, but if you feel like you don't know me, because even though I've been around for years, I'm a show up, sit in the back, listen and learn type personality, more so than in the front of the room. And so this is a little bit different in a lot of ways, actually doing the presentations. But again, I have been around the platform again just for those few years. My background really is as a water resource engineer. So that's what I went to school for. That's what I do full time at my company. And so I feel like I have a little bit of a split personality. Again, we do a ton of FEMA contract work where we do flood risk analysis, modeling, communications, anything resolving that program. It's very data intensive. And so that's what really led me into learning things like Excel and GIS, originally SharePoint, and moving into the Power Platform when it came out. So that was a really nice segue, allowing me to really step into a secondary role where I am the digital skills lead for our E&I consulting business. And so I run our internal user group where we help train coworkers about the platforms, how to use the technology, how to apply them to our business cases, things like that. So yeah, so the product that I'm going to talk about today, again, our skills matrix really is an evolution out of that group where we grew big enough that people were asking me, hey, do you have somebody who can help me with the Power BI? I'm like, I don't know. Let's build a skills matrix so I can know who knows how to do what and may be able to plug in and help across the company. So, you know, a lot of this, again, kind of grew out of that need from that group. But I do have my LinkedIn profile there if you would like to connect or reach out separately. And that's about the only social media I use. So you can definitely find me there if you would like to connect afterwards. And again, just to give a little bit of plug, if you're looking for this online, actually, I'm really excited. This just kind of got published, I guess it says May 1st, so last month. So the app we're going to share here is available as a sample solution on the Microsoft Adoption Gallery. So you can use the QR code or the link on the slides to get to that page if you want to find it that way. And just a quick side note, I have a lot of QR codes in the slide deck, and one, yes, I like QR codes, but that's not why they're there. While I was preparing the slide deck, I found how to use Microsoft Edge to create a QR code on the fly for any web page, and I just thought that was so cool. So I had to use it for like every link that's in this presentation slide deck. So, Anyway, so that is one way to kind of get to the sample solution if you want to do that. If you are there, though, it will bounce you to the GitHub site, which actually has all of the background, how to download, how to install, all that kind of stuff. So we will get there. I will walk you through the highlights there if you are not familiar with GitHub, so you can get a little bit oriented if you did want to use a copy of this template for yourself. Okay. Oh, and I forgot to turn on the chat. So if there are questions along the way, I usually do pretty good keeping up with the chat window at the same time. So if there are questions, I will try to catch them as I go so I can kind of answer them in the pace of what they're relevant to.
No questions yet, Jenna. If I see anything, I can always stop you and let you know, but feel free to just continue on.
Yeah, and I got the chat turned on now, so I may catch them as well. Okay, thanks. And, you know, part of the kind of the journey here, too, is I just wanted to touch on kind of why I'm sharing my story today is because I did submit this as a sample, and that in and of itself was a different kind of journey, right? So you had a product, and I really did feel compelled to share it back with the community. I had shown it to a few other people. There was a lot of interest of like, hey, that'd be great. Can I use that? I'm like, sure. And so, you know, there is an entire documentation out there on the PNP Power Platform Samples website. If you want to submit a sample, either for Power Apps, Power Automate, they have the Power Virtual Agents there as well. They are working on building this out, so there will be more options as time goes by. But this was a great experience to work through. There's a ton of guidance on how to contribute and to make it even easier. The PNP Sharing is Caring group actually hosts trainings. So if you did want to get involved with a community and you have something you want to share, and you're not really sure how to share, or you're not like sure how to use GitHub, you don't have an account, or you don't even know what a pull request is. We've all been there, right? I was there not too long ago. So these trainings and the volunteers that really run this group were amazing and really helped me get this up and get it successfully launched and get it to where it is today so I can share it with you all. Instead of just talking about it, you can actually go get a copy of it now. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to them. Again, fantastic group to work with. I'm very excited to kind of learn a little bit more about how to interact on GitHub and be able to share things that we're creating. Okay, so let's actually look at the app itself because, that's the fun part, right? That's why we're here. And this is just my kind of overall screen. Sometimes I feel like you start talking about an app and describing the things that you do. It's always hard to tell really how much is in there. So I just wanted to do this kind of collage here of its 4 screens. It really is kind of that straightforward. I try not to overcomplicate this. And again, our goal was that, as our user group was growing, I mean, it started out with probably 5 of us 3 years ago, saying, hey, we're using this new thing called Power Apps. Maybe we should share some best practices or what we're learning. And over the years that grew out of our local business into our larger business unit and then across the company around the world. Right now, I think as of this morning, I looked, we had about 50 members in our team. And so that was like a lot of people to keep track of. And I definitely didn't know all of them by name. And so being able to create this app and allowing people to log their own skills and then allowing each one of us, no matter where we were, to go find people to help them on a project or answer a question, gave them another avenue. Like we have Teams, we have Yammer, but not all of our members are comfortable posting questions in such an open forum. And so this gave them another avenue to be able to identify the, at least someone in the right direction that had skills that they were looking to use, and they could reach out via email and have a more direct conversation. The secondary benefit of this, the way we designed it, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but it gave me a way to see where people were and kind of where they wanted to be. And so it identified that training gap. And since I was hosting the user group and coming up with topics of, hey, what should we talk about or what should we try to teach people? This really gave me much, much better insight into what people were interested in learning, at what level were they looking for training. There was a lot of assumption that, hey, this is new, we got to do a lot of beginner training. And so we did a lot of stuff that was very, very basic for a long time. And as we started rolling this out, the number of people that were participating and actually putting their target user levels in here was overwhelmingly in the intermediate and advanced levels for the applications in the Microsoft platform. And so it really helped us to refocus our training and get it at the level where people really needed it to be. So again, it kind of started for a couple of reasons, morphed into some other benefits along the way. And so I think my next couple slides is just a couple little GIFs here I recorded ahead of time so you can get a feel for what some of the screens look like. And then when I get to the demo, we'll actually open this up in design mode and show you a little bit more behind the scenes of how it kind of came together. But this one, when you're actually filling out your own skills profile, again, you just have your list of applications down the left, and then you have your places where you can mark your skill level for each one of the little drop downs. Again, it's showing where you can actually filter if you just want to look at a subset of applications instead of the entire list. I kind of group them into like core, power platform, collaboration, things like that. And then again, we have people who are just general users, and then we actually have a handful of kind of pro developers that have kind of morphed back into our community. And so we wanted to give them a way that if they were writing custom code or extensibility or other things, that they could capture their skills as a developer on these applications as well. And then for each, again, you've got your current level and your target level, and that's what helped us to kind of tease out that training gap, right? So where are you compared to where you want to be? And that actually, the training kind of digest isn't something that's in the app itself. I do actually export that to Excel, run a few things through Power Query, and do my pivot tables that way. So that was just a little bit more flexible. But capturing the data this way lets me do that analysis. Okay, so that's the primary screen that everybody goes and fills out their profile. Then the next screen is the one that it definitely took me a little while to sort. I definitely had a few trial and error things along the way of like, how do I really connect all these pieces? And, we wanted to give people as much flexibility as possible of, okay, what apps are you looking for? What level are you looking for? Do you actually need a developer, or is it just somebody who's got user experience that's going to be knowledgeable enough to help answer your questions? So you can really kind of fine tune exactly what kind of support you're looking for. And then, the intent on the right is not to be a replica of Outlook. It is meant to encourage starting the conversation in the right direction. So, a lot of our stuff, we work in consulting, and we're like, okay, don't ask people to do a month's worth of work if you don't have a billable charge code for them, right? Or don't give the impression that something is urgent if really like the end of next week is perfectly fine. So we really just wanted to guide people into that conversation and remind them, please answer these kind of questions and give people an idea of really what your expectations are so they can commit or say, hey, sorry, I don't have time right now. Please ask somebody else, right? So you can start that conversation on the right foot. And so it just has a button to open an Outlook, and then you can actually finish composing your email. So if you need to attach files, CC other people, do some of those extra specialty things, you would just do that in Outlook like a regular email. Okay. Thanks. Sorry, I'm trying to read the chat at the same time too. So again, if not everybody loves data schemas, but if you are building apps, definitely thinking about how your data underlies your app is very important. And I definitely came into, I think, my database knowledge through the GIS platform, which usually surprises a lot of people. They don't realize how much database architecture is the core of most GIS technology these days. So sorry, my very rudimentary though entity diagram, but you can see our one-to-many relationships across my tables. But it really broke down into three, four lists, depending on how you're going to count them. So the roster is simply who are our users, so name, email address, and for us, we wanted to capture what business unit they were in and which country they were in. So as our users were looking for support, one, they could try to find somebody in their own time zone or someone somewhat close, because again, being global, it's hard if the person you're trying to talk to is in Australia and you're in the United States, like somebody's going to give up their sleep, right? So that's not really optimal. And the same thing too with business units. Our business is so big and so diverse that sometimes if the business use case is too specialized, somebody from a different business unit is going to have a hard time understanding your data or what you're trying to do. And so knowing which business to try to link to, it can be helpful. So the matrix application is just literally a list of the skills that we were trying to capture. So it's a list of all the Microsoft applications in the Office 365 Power Platform space. We haven't completely ventured out really into Dynamics or Azure or some of those other areas yet. So it is kind of limited to the Office and Power Platform right now. But for anybody looking at this and be like, hey, I could really use this, but that I don't really want to track applications. I want to track other skills. It's completely customizable from that standpoint. You can pick whatever set of categories makes sense and any kind of skills that make sense as a title. And so I have actually repurposed this already for other projects where we're capturing program knowledge areas or professional licenses or other things like that in addition to software. So that list of skills can really be a lot of different things. And those two lists, roster and the applications, really come together to create your matrix network. So this is where for every application and for every staff, you put those together, you get your composite key, right? And then you've got your 4 levels of what their skills are. And so that is really the core of the data structure behind this app. My last list up there, the matrix level, is just because I knew I was going to use the same 5 titles and labels for my skill levels in lots of different places. And so I just wanted to be able to bring it in once into a collection and just repeat and not have to have that manually coded in a lot of places. So that's why it's its own list in this diagram. Okay. And yeah. Okay, so this is where I was going to pause. I'll get out of PowerPoint Live for just a moment because I did want to open up this in GitHub and give you guys just a brief tour of what is on the GitHub page and point out a couple of things that are kind of good to focus on if you did want to use this yourself and you're not familiar with how to download a solution from the GitHub samples, because it was a little weird the first time I looked at it too, and I was like, what in the world am I looking at? So let me switch over and see if I can do this pretty seamlessly. That seemed to work. I'm sorry, it's on a different monitor too, so apologies for the panning back and forth. But so I don't actually have like a great navigation path to get here. It's just the direct hyperlink, but it is within the Power Apps samples here in the samples folder. There are actually lots of samples. So if you're just curious, like what else is in here, feel free to go explore. There's lots of cool stuff. If I get back to skills matrix though, the README here right on the first page is really going to provide a lot of the information you need to understand just to get started, some of the background, and there's screenshots here too, so you get an idea of what the app looks like. Of course, you guys are getting that preview in today's meeting. But if you keep scrolling down, couple other screens here, blah, blah, blah. It's actually really nice. It gives you these tags here that, this does not require any premium licenses. It does not require any experimental features. It does not require on-premise connectors or any custom connectors. So that kind of leads back to our conversation earlier of Dataverse versus SharePoint. And we definitely are using SharePoint for the solution, and that mostly is driven by the fact that we do not have premium licenses for such a large number of staff that would potentially be using these apps. We just did not get that approved. So that is why we're using SharePoint as our backend, so we don't have to worry about premium connectors and licenses. But it gives a nice little summary here of general features to expect the app to have. Prerequisites is really setting up that SharePoint data structure. I'm not fluent in Dataverse, so I'm not entirely sure how easy this would translate if you wanted to build this in Dataverse and reconnect it that way. So maybe folks that are Dataverse savvy on the call can chime in on the chat and let us know if this would be pretty transferable as a data source. But I tried to give as much information here as possible about naming conventions, suggested permissions, supplemental data if you don't want to have to create all of your own applications. Again, I provided that in the list. You can just copy paste. Again, recommended choice values, things like that. So all of that is specified here in the README. And then the part I really wanted to point out is this minimal path to awesome. So this was in the original template, which I'm really, really glad to. When you submit a sample, they give you a template README to say, hey, populate these pieces. And so they already had a lot of this filled out as the recommended way, and I just had to add the details. But up in the solution here, whoops, sorry, there's a long way up. There is the MS app file itself. So basically that minimal path to awesome is going to tell you basically use that and go to the Power Apps Studio to create a new app and browse to that MS app file. Right now, because of the way that the templates are, it's still connected to my data structure, right? So my SharePoint lists. And so you'll have to actually delete those connections first for each of those 4 lists, and then actually recreate new data connections that connect to the SharePoint list that you just created in the steps above. But once you do that, assuming your naming conventions, again, are consistent and there's no conflicts with the way I have the app designed, you can save, publish, and basically go live. Okay. So I love the way that they built the README. I think that really does help when you're picking up an app that you're not familiar with. And it tries to provide a lot of the background you need to make sure that you can get up and running and use it without too many problems. So let me go back to I think I skipped around in my slides the way I was planning on talking through things. Apologies. So I got to go back to one more slide before we do our demo. So let's see. This will gracefully go back to PowerPoint Live. Maybe. Because before I do a demo and go into design mode and start talking about some of those details that I kind of learned along the way, I do have a trivia question for the group. So let's see if this actually works in PowerPoint Live. I don't know, sometimes. All right. So the title here is If 2020 Were a Math Problem. Okay, so see if you can get this answer. It says, if you're going down a river at 2 miles an hour and your canoe loses a wheel, how much pancake mix would you need to reshingle your roof? And you must have seen my slides because the answer is 42. Maybe, I don't know, right? So came across that actually quite a while ago, and I found it again this week, and I was like, yeah, I think that applies to 2021, 22, maybe 2023. We'll see. Oh, do you want a prize? I don't have any prizes. Sorry. I give you a free skills matrix template. I don't know. But okay, so I thought that was fun. I got my little things out of order though, so we will switch back and go ahead and do a little bit of a demo in live mode here, so you can see if you win a free GitHub download. So, oh, I got my screens all mixed up again here. Hold on. And let's do this. And sorry, I'm kind of juggling monitors too, so please do let me know if the font in this is very hard to read. I can flip back to the other screen.
You can zoom your browser and just Control plus. It'll magnify it a little bit if you want. Or that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's
only
maybe
to the limits of the Canvas app window, though. Come on now, Jamie.
okay.
Bring on put on your Canvas app dev hat.
I missed the beginning of that, but I'm sure I did something wrong.
Yeah, it was just me teasing you. That's all.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so if I go into play mode again, we saw this in the little GIFs, but kind of starting at the beginning, the one screen that I didn't actually show is then the search by staff. So I populated this with dummy data. But this was a way too that instead of searching for any number of people with a combination of skills, I also provided a way you can just go look up the details for an individual person. And so this would be really helpful again if you have like a new team you're putting together and you're trying to understand their background, their strengths, their interests, that kind of thing. This would be a way to provide that access as well. So that was the one screen I kind of skipped over earlier. And actually, not just to skip screens too, but these screens are pretty straightforward, and so from a design perspective, not super interesting for me to talk about, where this is really just connected to a single list where then each one of these drop downs just on the change property patches the answer back to your SharePoint list. So fairly straightforward from that standpoint of kind of how it works and how it came together. The part that I really wanted to share is actually out on the search screen, because that took a little bit more work to get my head around how it could actually come together and do what I wanted it to do. And so just to get some data in here so it's a little bit easier to work with. Again, the scenario we talked about earlier is one of the first things I learned about Power Platform was really like, hey, I've got a form and I want to drop those responses in a SharePoint list. And so if you go through that scenario and say like, hey, I've got a forms and like I know I want to drop those into a SharePoint list, you can start your searching. Well, let's find somebody who definitely knows how to use forms. It's a good place to start. And then if you know you want to drop that data into a SharePoint list and you're not sure really, maybe you really need somebody who really knows SharePoint to understand how to put that structure together. So we'll go to an advanced user. And then you talk to some people off, around your office or whatever, and they were like, oh yeah, Power Automate can totally do that. Just write a flow. And you're like, well, I don't know anything about a flow, right? Maybe I should make sure that whoever I talk to knows how to use Cloud Flows as well. And maybe that's a developer, I don't know, right? So you can really kind of mix and match what you're searching for in the search scenarios that you're providing this. And so as I was doing that, you can see that it's basically making a list of all of the people that matched at least one of my search criteria on the left. And then it's creating a list here then of each individual match that applies for that person. And because this is dummy data, you're getting a bunch of ones down here. But in a real search, you would get whoever has the most number of matches at the top, and then it would sort descending. And so you would probably get lots of threes, a handful of twos, and then maybe some ones at the end. And so really, that was kind of what I wanted to do. I didn't want to have like a table where I like repeated the name multiple times within the app or the form. Like I just wanted to see the name once, right? And then also be able to filter by, if I'm just looking for folks in the US or again, in my business unit, I can then filter the results even further from there. And so this ended up being a bunch of different collections. And if you're super savvy, I guess I didn't actually have enough search results to show how this is working, but this also is a flexible height gallery on the left. So if I kept adding more things here, I don't know if I'm going to remember enough off the top of my head to find enough scenarios to fill this out. Let's see. I should have written down more examples. As this list on the right hand grows within the single card of the parent gallery, that the space will actually grow to accommodate this table so it doesn't get cut off. And so that was something definitely I had heard of flexible height galleries, but I had never actually used them in an app before this. And so that was definitely something a little bit to kind of work out. Like, how do I do a gallery inside of a gallery where they were all kind of coming from the same data source, but being used in different ways? Okay. So if we start at the top and just kind of work our way through the logic, most of the magic happens on this add button at the top. And so that is actually doing a lot for us. And, the first thing it's really doing is it's building a collection of what you searched for. So every time you pick a combination of things here and click add, it's building a collection that builds this little list here. And what that allows you to do then is to refine your search by quickly deleting scenarios that didn't actually help you or provide more combinations of users, or for whatever reason you want to remove them, right? So you can see what you searched for and you can interactively add or delete more as you need to. So that's the first thing it's doing. And then the second thing it's doing is, what am I doing? Oh, so so I have all my collections are prefaced with COL. So this is actually just the search. And so it's building a list of everybody who basically matches the raw query that I asked by title and by level. And so that's like the full complete list of every match that returns my search. And then I do a couple more things. So I from that full search, I'm actually running this distinct function to whittle it down to a list of just the emails. So I have a unique list of staff. And so I can use this collection of unique staff to populate this outer gallery here. So I get a single user per card. And then I can use the full search results for this inner gallery here that just runs and matches based on the email address to whatever card it is in the outer gallery. And so that's how it really connects all the pieces together. And I know there was discussion earlier too in the chat talking about, SharePoint size lists and delegation and a number of other things you have to be careful with when you're doing this kind of development. And so that is the one, I would say, weak point of this design is everything is a delegable function up until this point. The one place that you would potentially overrun your limit, again, is if you have a really, really large user base, so greater than your delegation limit. And you're searching for something very common, like I want people who have basic Excel skills. You might exceed what this filter is going to return and drop into your collection. But pretty much anything except for that, it's pretty safe because you're doing some pretty specific level queries here, intentionally breaking it down into pieces where you likely would not overrun that, especially if your set of users is not in the many, many thousands. So you can pretty sure you're actually getting all of your returns. So just wanted to point that out that you do have to worry about delegation a little bit, even though the functions themselves are all delegable with this design. Okay. Sorry, I'm catching out on the chats. Oh, so I don't know if my names for variables and collections actually align with your guidance there. I'll have to check that out.
It doesn't matter. As long as you have one, it looks like you have one. That's all that matters. So hats off to you there.
Yeah, so all my variables are global variables are VAR, all my local variables are LOC, all my collections unfortunately are COL. So yeah, I've kind of got my own convention there. I do everything. I think they call that snake case. I just call it underlining. I was told there was a whole debate between camel case and underline methods, and I was told that underlining allows screen readers to actually read your text way easier than camel case. So I think that's why I've defaulted to this. I'm not entirely sure if that's 100%, but I do, have DD for drop down, LBL for all my labels, ICO for all my icons, images. So yeah, whether it's a standard convention or not, I do have a convention.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And I lost track of my clock. How am I doing on time? Oh, okay, not too bad. So the why do you hide stuff in the search results? That's actually a little bit of a remnant from my original design where I couldn't get it to sort in descending order by the best match. And so I had a lot of ones sprinkled in with my higher number of matches. And so it allowed me to just temporarily scroll through and say, hey, I don't need to see these people, just, kind of let me ignore them for a moment so I can focus on the people with the best match and then select. Whoops, I forgot to hit Alt and select and decide who I want to email and start that communication. So that actually is a little bit of something I probably could have deleted from the template, but that was its original intent, was just to clean up the results a little bit. So the question. And I think that was actually the one thing, if you go to Microsoft conferences and you don't sign up for the one-on-one consultations, I highly recommend it because actually that is where they helped me sort out a few things. I was thinking of this and helped me get this screen to where it is now. And so super, super helpful conversations at those events. And I wonder if I can find where I did that real fast because it was, here. So as I'm creating that distinct off of my original search to get my list of unique staff, I am then going and adding columns to that and merging in the country, the business, and then also doing this count off of my original full search results as well. And so that's how I'm able to actually get that count into that outer collection so I can use it as a sort field to put them in descending order. So those were the things that these tripped me up a little bit as I was doing this originally. And, through that consultation, they helped me just understand the syntax a little bit better, rearrange a few things that I had and actually get the count working. So Yeah, that was a great a great opportunity. I'm glad I didn't miss. Okay, so I can always come back to this, but I do have a few more slides in my slide deck. So I'm going to switch back and then we can come back if there are questions at the end for Q&A, and we can take a closer look if we need to. Okay. So whoops, let's go back to PowerPoint Live. And I forget that it always starts at the beginning. So whoops. Okay, so yeah, so demo again, hopefully that was helpful, a little bit of in behind the scenes of kind of how it came together and the different pieces that I used. One of the other things I did want to either suggest or recommend if you're not familiar with it, I didn't do this developer program before building my template. I wish I would have, but it's been super, super helpful as I've been preparing for demos like this, conference presentations, or just other reasons to have access to a free E5 license where I don't currently have E5. So it gives me ways to have a free developer space. It is a sandbox that I can go and spin up my own teams and try out my own stuff, and I don't have to worry about working on my work tenant, especially since I can't create my own teams at work. I have to submit help desk tickets for that. And so, yeah, having this developer tenant, I wish I would have done it a long time ago. So if you don't already have one and you do a lot of app development, I definitely recommend it. Again, it is free, and as long as you're using it, I've been told it will auto renew roughly, I think it's every 90 days, right? So just wanted to do a quick plug for that. And then one of the last couple of slides here. Thanks, Jamie, for the recommendation on Makaru. This really, really saved me. I was wondering how I was possibly going to translate my app with a bunch of personnel data that I couldn't share externally and actually prep it so it looked real, it functioned, but it really just had fake data. So Makaru was awesome, where I was able to upload some sample data for it to use as like choice fields. And then I was able to build out my own schema for, hey, I need a list with a bunch of people's names and email addresses. And then I need a list of people. So use those names along with this application list and mix and match them with a bunch of skill levels. And Makaru actually let me do that all within the free license that's available. I didn't have to go beyond that to the paid service. And being able to then export it as a CSV and then actually just copy paste and load that back into my SharePoint site on the development tenant really helped to bring this project together and allow me again to do these demos and share it and not worry about sharing sensitive data. So really, really cool. I wish I would have known about Makaru a long time ago. And then learning resources, there's so much out there. I think we were talking about this before too, that like nobody knows everything. There's always going to be things that that others don't, and things that others know that maybe you haven't heard of before. And so I did just want to share these lists if anybody today's meeting is relatively new. Maybe SharePoint or maybe like a bit about Canvas apps, but you haven't really dug into the flexible height galleries or collections. These are the links that I found most helpful when I was going through and reading the documentation and learning how to use those features. So again, all those links are in the slides if you want to do QR code scanning, whatever. I keep forgetting if the slide deck will be distributed. I'm not entirely sure, but it will be in the video for sure. So that's why the QR codes are helpful as well. And then last but not least, again, this is me, my LinkedIn information, and then another link there for the app on GitHub. So if you did want to look at a copy of the template and either expand it, make new suggestions, it is out there on the PNP samples. So if you have another great feature or something you would like to add, feel free to, fork the repo and, do a pull request and submit more stuff, or just use it as is. That's great too. So I think with that, probably have plenty of time for questions. Actually got through that faster than I thought I would.
All right, we got Aiden's got his hand up.
Okay.
What were super cool, by the way. What were some of the biggest challenges you had when you were developing this?
I mean, I think definitely the biggest challenge was getting the search screen and figure out all those collections and how to get the data to come in without taking a long time to load. Like I didn't want to do one big query and like sit and spin waiting for it, right? So trying to figure out how do I break this up into pieces so it runs a little bit faster, make it super flexible. And so I think just figuring out that logic flow, how to build the collections and the sequence in which to build them. And then I ended up with so many controls on the screen. I was like, oh my gosh, how do I arrange these so it's not overwhelming with a bunch of buttons and then you can't see your data? So I think I had a little bit of a UI challenge on that screen as well. So I think that's really where I struggled.
Yeah, well, it looks awesome. I think you did a great job.
Thanks.
I would be curious to know a little bit more about how this is being used, if you can speak to that a little bit. I mean, I assume you built this for a reason. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the original version based off the template that is out there I shared today is still being used within our Office 365 community. We did make it optional for people to sign up and load their skills. So we don't actually have that many users, maybe 100 or so, but those are our really super users within the community. And so it has allowed me, again, when I get emails all the time, like, hey, can you help me? I'm like, no, but hey, talk to this person. So I can go query the app real fast and give them a couple of names of people to reach out to, even if they're not going to go into the app themselves and use it. Again, it's helped me a ton with planning the training. So I figure that people who take the time to actually go populate their information, I will focus training geared towards them. And so being able to tease that information out has really helped me plan the user group sessions. And then we've had a couple of already spin-offs from this. Internally, one of our other divisions took the template and reconfigured it with the list of skills for their engineering group. And they had been using an Excel spreadsheet for a long time. And it was getting, kind of clunky, hard to use, not kept up to date. And so they were really excited about being able to take something like this in Power Apps and repurpose it. And so they've been using it for their staff and their business. And then we have another client externally that, again, is a large JV team that we were like, oh my gosh, how are we possibly going to know who everybody is across all these teams? So when we're looking for a subject matter expert, it's right now, it's just like a bunch of email this person. And so we finally just got the licenses and everything turned on the client tenant. So we're going to install a version of this for that JV as well. So we can start networking across all the JV partners and start to get to know everybody. So when we have project tasks, we can fill it with the right person and not just the people we know. So those are the three probably best examples.
That's great. That's awesome. You're saying JV, like junior varsity?
Joint venture, sorry.
Ah, that makes more sense.
Yeah, joint venture.
That's really cool. Yeah, so I we have a little bit of time. I know I have a lot of customers who are either actively hosting internal user groups or thinking about starting them. I know I've talked to you in the past about this. Could you talk a little bit about that, about how you started an internal user group, how it's going so far? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so that's another interesting one. We're actually about to hit our 3-year anniversary next month. And so that, in one respect, is very exciting that we started it so long ago and have kept it going. Again, it really did start with, I knew somebody who was doing Power Apps who knew somebody who was doing Power Apps, and we're like, hey, I don't actually know you. We should talk and get to know each other. And so we had an initial meeting, again, 3 years ago, that we dubbed the super users because we were like the only people using the technology. And at the end of that very first call, we're like, hey, this is really great, but there's probably a lot of staff who would like to learn this that just don't know even where to get training or where to ask questions. And so 2 weeks later, we had our first level 101 course is what we dubbed it, to just give people of what is Office 365 and why should I care? And we just did a whole series introducing people to all the various different applications. What are they called? When you might use it, things like that. And the 101 we did for several months, and then we kind of rebranded it at the end of the year to a 201, where we kind of took a turn. Instead of just answering what is it, we really focused on business applications and how would you use it and why. So trying to meet people in their day-to-day jobs of data that they're handling or problems that they're trying to solve, repetitive tasks, things like that. Field data collection was a big one. And we didn't really have a plan. I hate to say that maybe, but it was just put a reoccurring meeting on the calendar and just don't cancel. It was just show up every month, which was actually twice a month, and talk about stuff. So there were definitely months that I wish that I could have had more time to prepare or something more exciting to talk about. But I will admit that some of the ones that I felt like, oh my gosh, I had an idea, I put 3 slides together and everything else was live demo that I did on the fly, were the most successful meetings that we had. And people were like, oh, that was fantastic. So, it doesn't always have to be polished or, something, that you would present again out in public. When you're internal working with coworkers, it really can just be off the cuff and casual. And, that was enough to get the message out about this technology. And as we grew, our biggest challenge then was getting people to engage and to interact. We had so many users, but only a small fraction. I mean, maybe 50, 100, 150 people would actually come to a meeting. Our Teams metrics do show that we've got like 2,000 plus active users every month. So, I mean, we know that they're interacting with the content and the data, but it was hard to tell, exactly what they were learning and what impact we were having. So for 2022, we started, for every meeting, we end the last 10 to 15 minutes of the call with breakout sessions. And so we're encouraging people like, hey, if you're not going to talk during the meeting and you're not going to put stuff in the chat, we're going to give you 10 to 15 minutes of just introduce yourself to somebody in your room that you don't know, and hey, talk about what business you're in or talk about the meeting. But we've had trivia to do during the breakout sessions, or quick surveys, or we had people going and playing with loop components and dumping data into different task lists, and just trying to be more creative of ways for them to interact and engage with the technology instead of just showing up and listening for a half an hour. So it really has evolved. We've tried a lot of different things, but I feel like, it's in general been pretty successful. 3,000 members out of a company of 30, 40,000 people, depending on when you count. Doesn't seem like a lot, but talking to management, they definitely have seen the value of the program. They're very excited about the energy we've generated in moving our company towards digital. So, sorry, that was a long answer to your question, but.
I wanted everybody else to hear it. I mean, you told me this a while ago about how many people you had, and I was shocked at how many, and I please know that 3,000 is nothing to laugh at. Like, it's a really amazing number. So hats off to you and the rest of your team. So does anybody else have questions for Jenna, since we're coming up on 10 minutes?
I just wish all of the 3,000 would actually use our skills matrix. That would be awesome. But we'll get there.
Do you guys have a team or a Yammer or anything? Like, do you have an asynchronous way of communicating?
Yeah, so, and that's kind of a little bit of our struggles. We started our community in Teams, and so we've got a channel for each of our reoccurring meetings, and then additional channels for posting like training announcements or conferences that are coming up, things like that. We do have, before we started the community in Teams, we did already have Yammer channels out there for just about every Microsoft product. And so we kind of went backwards. We had Yammer, and then we created the community in Teams. And then about 6 months after we started our community, our IT department stood up the official Office 365 Champions program that was connected with Microsoft's parent program there for champions. And so it has been a little confusing for some of our staff where we have the user group and the champions program running in parallel. They do serve different targets, and we do actually have a pretty separate, in some ways, set of staff that attend. Some are champions, some are only in the community. There are a handful that are in both. But there's not as much overlap as you might think, which really surprised me when I looked at the numbers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
thanks for sharing. So can I just ask a question? So how about this kind of the app, the testing process, user testing process? Also, what kind of the platform you ask the people to test? Do you test on the mobile or only on the web page? Because I see the most of how you launch this kind of app in different kind of platform.
Right. So this wasn't designed and intended to be used on the desktop. I don't think I even opened it on the mobile device or expect anybody to use it on the mobile. It's just too much going on the screens, and I don't know how I could possibly have rearranged some of those to actually even fit well on a mobile device, so I didn't even try. So maybe I should have, but I didn't.
That's fair. That's fair. Good question, Solar. Anybody else? Wow. This was awesome. Jenna, again, thank you so much for taking the time. Everybody, make sure you follow her on LinkedIn. Make sure you check out her GitHub. I think you can vote on GitHub. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but if you can, thumbs up on that. Upvote it. Share it on your social networks if you have LinkedIn or Twitter. And we'll have this recording will be posted soon on Kylie's YouTube channel. You can search Kylie Kaiser on YouTube and find all of our previous recordings and some really cool content that she's created herself. So definitely check that out. Again, I guess we'll call it early tonight. Thank you guys for everybody in attendance. And if you have any other follow-up questions, please come back next month and we'll do this all again.